you have the ball, and we have started the recording.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. My name is Kate Kramer. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at Advanced CTE, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us on our update on Putting Learner Success First, a shared vision for the future of CTE. For those of you not familiar with this vision, this was a document that was created over the course of well over a year in partnership between initially seven national organizations, a number that has grown, supportive organizations, that really is about setting a vision of where CTE needs to go to really support learners at all levels, and really thinking beyond the future of CTE, but the future of what our education system needs to be, how it needs to be transformed, and the role that CTE can play within that transformation. It's very unique in that it really looks at CTE as a driver of transformation and really focusing on learners regardless of where their background, their skill level, their age, their community, and really thinking about how do we support career success for all, and how can all the players and stakeholders work together to really make that core to all of our work and our education system moving forward. So as I mentioned, this was a vision, and I'm going to spend some time walking through it and its main principles and the actions, and thinking through what it will take individually and collectively for this vision to come to pass. But it was developed through a year-long, very collaborative effort where we brought together over 175 stakeholders at the Future of CTE Summit about a year ago to really think through where we were and where we wanted to go as a community, as a country, to really prepare ourselves, prepare our economy, and most importantly, prepare our learners for the future. And as a result of all that fantastic input, iteration, and partnership with other national organizations who you'll be hearing from later today, really key to this vision is that it cannot be done by CTE alone, it cannot be done by K-12 alone, but really will require and demand a full commitment from all stakeholders to really own this. And what makes this so exciting is that this vision, which is not the first vision that Advanced CTE has helped develop. We had a previous vision, but it really was for and by CTE, and we thought it was really important, given where CTE is and how far it's come in the past few years. This had to be a collaborative and open conversation and process, and so intentionally we reached out to many of our key partners to help us craft this vision and have it be something that we didn't own, we didn't drive, but that we all collectively felt ownership over and felt like we could help advance it through our work. So we started this work when we released the vision back in May of 2016. We did so with 6 national organizations as our partners. You can see the list of them there. Since the release, we've actually added an additional 4 partners who really came to this vision and came to this work and saw their organizational missions within the vision itself and its principles, and have kind of stepped up to show their support and really help advance it in meaningful ways. So we could not have done this vision, we couldn't have created it, and it certainly wouldn't have been as quality and as aggressive and bold without our partners. I'm really excited to have 4 of our partners on today's webinar to share how they've been involved in this work and really how their work will help move it forward, and looking for those kind of both opportunities within their current work, but also thinking about where we need to be pushing ourselves, our communities, our field further to really make this vision a reality. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes talking through the vision itself and unpack the principles, unpack some of the work, but I want to briefly pause to talk about our speakers, who then will each take a few minutes to talk about their organizations and their commitment to the vision. So we have Steve DeWitt from the Association for Career and Technical Education, Erica Kashiri from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Rich McKeon from the Council of Chief State School Officers, and Brian Wilson from National Skills Coalition. Importantly, these are partners that represent very different sets of stakeholders, but we're all able to come together around this vision because we really saw how critical the need was, and how much we all felt as though we could contribute to this by working together. So there are 5 key principles within this vision document, within putting learner success first. And each of them have a number of actions and activities under them that provide a little bit more guidance, but I want to speak kind of how and why we came to these 5 principles and why we think they're so important. So the first is really about ensuring excellence within CTE. We know this is a vision that's bigger than CTE and really thinks about CTE as a platform or a lever for transforming and preparing all students for career success. But we know we also needed to start with CTE and make sure that we were honest and committed and held ourselves accountable to only having the highest quality programs. This means investing in programs that work for learners, that work for economy, that work for employers, and having the courage to phase out or transform or defund those programs that are not doing all of those things. This is achievable through federal and state policy, but also demands the involvement of employers as a key partner in helping define what that quality is and what excellence look like, and being part of the process throughout the development, adoption, implementation, and refinement of CTE pathways. The second principle is really about empowering learners and that they can make a successful and well-informed choice about what their career path will look like. This is everything from actually building out career advisement systems that work for students in elementary grades, middle school, high school, and all the way through post-secondary and workforce development that gives them the information, the resources, the tools, the mentors they need to make the right choices for them based on their skills, their aptitudes, and their interests. It also means providing meaningful, experiential, authentic, work-based learning experiences that really give learners the opportunity to test out, understand what the world of work looks like and feels like, and particularly for students at the earlier age, be able to identify what they don't want to do as well as what they do want to do moving forward. The third principle is about making learning personalized and flexible. So the way I often describe this as, right now we have an education system that requires learners to bend towards it and meet certain credit hours and meet certain Carnegie units and meet certain time-based restrictions and come to classes that are happening in person, and thinking about how do we build an education system that bends towards students and meets them where they are. So this means breaking down the silos between core academic and technical courses and instruction. This means providing more competency-based options where learners can progress at their own speed and need. It means exploring blended instructions and more credit by proficiency to allow students to earn credit for the skills they have and access the education training they need when they need them to get the skills in real time. And finally, this means breaking down the silos that are put between the systems, between secondary and post-secondary, to ensure seamless and smooth transitions for learners at all levels. Fourth principle is about the facilitation of learning and having knowledgeable experts in the classroom at the K-12 and beyond level. So looking at the certification opportunities, both for CT students, but also for instructors, but also for instructors in the core academic to have a role to play in ensuring that students understand their career opportunities and are having opportunities for authentic instruction. This means strong professional learning opportunities for teachers across the continuum, as well as thinking about how can industry experts be providing their knowledge, their skills into classrooms, whether as informal, serving as a mentor, as an advisor, all the way up to actually serving as a teacher, and building capacity within all classrooms so that students understand the connection between what they're learning and how that will be used later in life. Finally, the last principle is really about tying all these together and having the systems and the partnerships in place that put learner success at the core of everything they're doing, and it serves as that North Star for all of their work. So this means about creating common statewide vision that puts learners first, and looking at your federal, state, local policies, funding streams to identify where they can be better leveraged, where they can be better streamlined to really serve learners where they are and where they need to go. It means building up and supporting partners and intermediaries to really help coordinate this work. It can't all happen within the classroom, it can't all happen within state agencies, but will require employers and community-based organizations to support this. And it means looking at accountability systems. We know what measure matters, and actually valuing career readiness and career success within our state and federal accountability systems to really serve as that driver and create the incentives for all to move on this. So with that, with those principles, which again are really, I will say, there's no order to them. They're all equally important and all need to happen in lockstep for us to really transform our system and really think about career success as that common goal. But for this to happen, it means a commitment from all of us on the phone, from all of us who engage with learners throughout our different opportunities to really commit to these principles and to these actions and all that we do, which means holding ourselves accountable when political situations change, when funding is tight, when the pendulum swings back on some of these issues, but really holding fast. This is the core of what we do and what we need to stay committed to. It means working together and realizing that no one organization will be able to achieve all of this, but if we come together, we can fill in all the gaps and really leverage the expertise and the capacity of each other to make this real and make this happen. And it's only through a shared commitment, those partnerships, that commitment, that this actually will be put into place. So with that, I'm going to just share this briefly, and then I'm really excited to turn this over to some of our partners to talk about their work and how it relates to this. But I wanted to show this hopefully not too complicated chart to show you kind of what we've been doing at the national level is across the partner organizations to really get us to map our own work and map where we are putting our own resources and capacity to help address some of these principles and the actions that fall under them. And so what you can see is most important is reading this kind of vertically and looking across that there's a lot of work across these organizations to really move towards excellence in CT programs, right? Through a lot of our federal policy work that we partner closely with ACT and National Skills Coalition, for example. There's quite a bit of work at the systems level. More can be done there, but really thinking about a number of states are working together around thinking about, given the new opportunity under the Every Student Succeeds Act, to really build and measure career readiness into accountability system. Quite, some work around building up intermediaries. The chamber, I know, will be sharing some of the work they've been doing there to really position their local chambers to help this mission. Where we have some bigger gaps and where I think we have to all push ourselves to really think about what that work will look like is around kind of the flexibility and personalization. There is work happening. CCSO is doing work through to support competency-based systems. I think more intention thinking about how to support the integration of CTE and academics in that and really build career readiness as an anchor of that work will be an opportunity a lot of us can think about to finally break down those silos between academics and technical and secondary and post-secondary is work that probably will never be done, but demands our commitment and kind of perseverance. And then thinking about the supporting educators both within the CT system but also in the core academics to really put career as a focal point for all that they do. So this is just, we update this on a quarterly basis. The goal is at some point we will have kind of every row, or I should say every row filled in and have as much of this orange. Again, no one organization should or can do all of this, but really thinking about how do we map what we know that we can partner together to make sure that all of us are working towards this shared vision. So with that, and I will say, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. We're going to kind of go through all the presentations, but then we've left a good amount of time for Q&A, and I'm happy to share more. I'm going to come back at the kind of after the other panelists speak to talk about some of the resources we've created to kind of help the field advance this vision within their communities. But with that, I'm excited to turn this over to Steve DeWitt from ACT to talk about some of the work that they've been doing, a lot of it in partnership with us, a lot of it really being leaders in their own right to help advance a number of these principles. So Steve?
Thanks, Kate, and good to be here today. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about the collaboration, and I think that's a great place to start. Yeah, I don't have visual of my slides, but I think the slide that's up now is just a little snapshot of ACTE. For those that don't know, we're a membership organization, and we represent those folks who are in the field, who are practitioners, teachers, administrators, career guidance professionals in the space, both at secondary and post-secondary level. And, you know, I want to commend Kate because we have worked very collaboratively over the last 3 to 4 years. We actually have a memorandum of understanding and a whole set of activities that we're working on together, which I think is important for our field because historically those good relationships have not always existed in every single state between state government officials and folks at the local. And so we're really trying to do more work together and to really show the field the way in terms of how you work on collaboration. I also wanted to mention a lot of what we do is really in the area of professional development, and so that's a focus for us. One example of the way we've worked together is with Advanced CTE's Career Clusters Conference is now integrated into our larger Vision Conference. So we've really enjoyed collaboration not only on that but other areas, and I just wanted to mention that. So if we could go to the next slide. You know, the place for us, I think, in starting was really talking to our own field about getting involved in this shared vision. In my mind, if we don't have that application of the vision on the ground in schools, it's not going to be successful. And so we are an important voice, and we need to be encouraging our field to get involved in this. You know, for our field, I think the new paradigm of a community-wide approach is important. I hear quite often from our career and technical educators that they feel sidelined in schools. Historically, they feel like career and technical education often is in a separate building and not always integrated well with academics, and that's really important from our perspective as a national organization and something we want to move forward. I along with Kim Green of the state directors, Advanced CTE, sit on the National Career Academy Coalition, which is a great model of how you integrate academics and CTE. We want to see more of that implemented in schools nationwide, whether it's through a career academy model or a traditional model. And I also wanted to point out, Kate had referenced the SSA, and a lot of the proposals that were put into that bill were really about better integrating the legislation at the federal level, which is something we all need to do as well. So thank you on that. So we're pushing our field to get involved here and to really understand. Next slide. I wanted to give you 2 quick examples of activities that ACTE has taken to really put the vision in action, and the first is our high-quality CTE initiative. We have been analyzing the various definitions that are out there around high-quality CTE, and we don't believe there was ever one strong, unified example around or definition of high-quality CTE related to a program of study, which in CTE are those articulated programs that are academic CTE and employability skills related and articulate between secondary and post-secondary and leading to a meaningful credential. So that's one thing we're working on right now. I want to thank Advanced CTE because they led us to the Central Regional Education Lab in Denver, which was doing some similar work, and we're now collaborating with them to verify the research. What we've done is really analyzed all of those examples existing and developed a framework of 11 different elements that we believe need to be in place to have a high-quality CTE program. What we'll be doing once we complete this work and verify that is implementing it into our own activities, such as our awards programs. We want to make sure that our awards are reflecting the best and the brightest and really high-quality CTE work. We're hoping that other organizations will use this as well as they move forward. Go to the next slide, please. And one other example of an initiative we've taken is under the broad category of knowledgeable experts. We're working very closely with the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards through a relationship we initiated together about 2 years ago after they had really done a review of their National Board certification for CTE practitioners. and we're developing a caucus within our organizations that will be composed of ACT members and national board members. And the end goal of that is to make sure that there are more national board members from ACTE and more ACTE members from the national board. And we think that's really important because we think individuals need to get involved in professional organizations. They need to be pushing forward in their own professionalism. They need to be going back to school. So there's a whole set of activities in between getting that national board certification on the end or an ACT membership, and we'll be developing that through our memberships that have formed this caucus. I'll end there and just give you my contact information if people have additional information, and just reiterate how excited we are about this work and collaborating. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that and you sharing some of that great work, and personally really looking forward to the work with National Board of Professional Teaching Standards. I know that's some new and pretty exciting work that's just happening in a couple weeks. So I'm going to now turn to Erica Kashiri from the Chamber of Commerce Foundation to talk about some of their work. And a quick shout out to Erica that helped put together a blog actually just yesterday on this work that we've put on both of our websites. So thanks again for that work, and I encourage you all to check it out. So Erica, I'll turn it to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kate, and also the rest of the advanced CTE team for putting this together. This is a really exciting vision for us, so really excited to be a part of it. Just a little bit about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. We are the nonprofit arm of the U.S. Chamber, which represents interests more than 3 million businesses across the country. And on the foundation side, as a part of the Center for Education and Workforce, we're really working to strengthen the ability of this country to compete. This isn't just competing domestically within the United States, but also grow internationally through building an educated, skilled, and entrepreneurial workforce as we go along. And I love these type of webinars. We really are starting to preach to the choir, but I mean, as we all know, we are really operating in a world of rapid change. This is not just kind of the technological change that you see every time Apple comes out with a new iPhone, but the very way that business gets done is just fundamentally changing. And given this, you keep hearing or seeing these articles over and over again in newspapers about how youth and young adults are really looking for ways to better future-proof their careers. They understand routine jobs of the past are dying if they haven't died already. This is why you keep hearing about those critical soft skills such as critical thinking, teamwork, et cetera, that seem to be timeless as we go through this rapid change. And also things such as learning how to access information and learning how to learn and those type of things. But what is also great is that employers are looking to future-proof their companies by bringing in talent that gives them a competitive edge. So when you think about these two things, how everyone's sort of looking for this talent that is able to stand time, we should be able to forge a win-win scenario out of this. Both the supply and demand side really should be after the same goals, but we keep hearing over and over again that we're still really struggling when it comes to employer engagement. This could be when it comes to communicating and delivering value, when it comes to onboarding employers, and sustaining relationships over a long period of time, so it's not just a one-time connection to the employer community. And this challenge is actually what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we have made a commitment to tackle. We're building systems, supports, processes, all for business to really play a leadership role in strengthening their career pathways. We call it Making Youth Employment Work. The idea is that we need to make it work in a way that creates shared value for both the business community as well as other stakeholders involved. And with that, just as quick background, if you turn to the next slide, I wanted just to give you an idea of where we will focus our efforts as we push forward with this shared vision. Just as a caveat, I do want to take a step back and say all 5 of the pillars and the principles that Kate discussed at the beginning of this webinar have a role for the business community. In that great chart she put together, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we're dedicated sort of to implementing work across kind of every category that's there. However, the first 2 are of particular interest to the work that we're doing moving forward. those are that all CTE programs are held to the highest standard of excellence, and all learners are empowered to choose a meaningful education and career. We really feel like we have a unique contribution in this space. Not only is it a natural sort of extension of our current work and our efforts to close the skills gap and build demand-side capacity to engage with youth and young adults, but these two things were particularly require deep and consistent employer leadership, both in terms of feedback and it's in terms of constantly having a touch point with provider community in order to be successful. For example, the first pillar, the first principle has a role for employers in validating the pathways and ensuring quality. What I really liked about this is that we really do need to make sure that these are real career pathways and not theoretical ones. And that second principle requires us to really think about new types of partnerships that provide learners with authentic experiences. I recently read in an article that I wish I knew who, I remembered who wrote this article, but it said work-based learning is the new entry level. So what role can employers play in getting kind of young talent those experiences early on and really network youth and employers earlier on? And we talk about it, again, I'll keep saying this is in a way that promotes shared value. It's not just a nice-to-do thing for business, but a way to connect with talent as they move forward and compete. So again, all the pillars or all the principles have a role for business, and we are excited about engaging in all those ways. But we're really diving deeply into the issue or the challenge of making sure that these pathways are high quality and also expand those work-based learning opportunities. So if you move to the next slide, it's my quick little visual slide of kind of the written manifestations of how we're thinking about getting employers engaged on both the quality and the work-based learning pieces of the vision. These reports look at processes for employers both, inform, to validate, to participate, all in the implementation of career pathways. I encourage you to skim through the reports. There will be a site at the very end that I'll send, or that will be on the last slide for you to access the reports. But I just want to give you a quick rundown while I do have a second of time on what each of the reports aims to attack. The first is called Talent Orchestrators, Scaling Youth Employment Through Business-Facing Intermediaries. It's a big fancy way of saying how do we build a framework for intermediaries to better meet employer needs, to almost serve as new age staffing agencies to support employers who are looking to create a pipeline of talent. So that, for our inaugural report, we really wanted to focus on how we sort of improve the work that's already being done out there and make it more business-facing. The second one, competing on innovation, designing business-led challenges to build the next generation of talent, really recognizes the world of work has fundamentally changed. No longer are people working in silos, but they work as part of a team. There's hierarchies have been flattened, so every person at every level is really expected to drive innovation and not just at the C-suite level. So really want to figure out, could we launch sort of industry-led experiences that mirror this need for innovation workforce? So that's what that second report really details. The third one, connected to careers, expanding employer leadership and career development, addresses the challenge that youth have in terms of navigating career pathways. If employers hold the greatest currency out there when it comes to these career pathways, which is the end goal of jobs, how do you really strengthen the employer voice then when it comes to career advising? So that would be the third report, and the fourth report is almost a combination of all of them, high level talking about career readiness and a business-led approach for supporting K-12 schools. We have a real opportunity here to integrate college and career. We often think of those two as separate, but there are a lot of commonalities or a lot of pieces that can be combined to make move someone, I guess, from career ready to actually career competitive. So how do we elevate the employer role when it comes to that, including how do we elevate the employer voice and accountability systems when it comes to career readiness, and also how do we explore employer-led quality assurance systems. So those are the 5 reports. The idea for putting out these reports sort of in quick subsequent behavior was to say, okay, now that we have this out there, how do we actually operationalize these pieces on the ground? So we're starting with the ready and the willing, and I'm excited to say that there's a nice chunk, a number of chambers that are really raising their hands to support this work. So we really hope to do over the next year is to begin rolling out three big things. The first is exploring what an employer-managed work-based learning infrastructure could actually look like. For us, this is like the ultimate form of employer engagement. For example, what would happen if the employer community organized in a way that they were in charge of vetting and matching and placing and validating and even creating kind of an alumni network of talent. So basically, from soup to nuts here. And the alumni network piece is quite huge for us because we hear a lot of employers talk about the conversion rates. Why am I engaging, outside of philanthropy with a ninth grader when it's going to take so long for me to see any sort of return from that investment? So if you have this employer-managed system that also includes this alumni network you can tap into after people have gone through those experiences, it kind of answers that question a bit. So the first one is really looking at work-based learning deeply. The second is looking at quality assurance. We're starting broad next year to look at how we can stand up an employer-led quality assurance system, but also looking how we can dive deeper and almost include things like work-based learning. So a quality assurance system for work-based learning too. And the third one is we're going to continue to provide technical assistance when it comes to organizing employers in communities. We've been doing this for a few years now with our chambers and other business associations. We will continue to do this as we move forward because we do think that as we do this work, employer engagement is going to be a huge piece. So as much as we can help communities think about organizing the employers, the more we're able to all win in this scenario. So if we turn to the last slide, all reports are actually at www.youthemploymentworks.org. And here's my contact information. More than happy to answer the questions at the appropriate time. Thank you all.
Thanks, Erica. That was a terrific overview of the work that you are leading and that many of your local chambers are really championing in their communities. And I just want to also point that the link to the publication you mentioned has been added to the chat box for anybody who's interested in finding it. So I'm next going to turn to Rich McKeon, who is leading the career readiness work over at the Council of Cheat School Officer, who we are working with very closely around new skills for youth. I know he's going to talk a bit about that. So Rich, I will turn it over to you.
And
membership organization.
I just unmuted you, so there you go.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. The Council of Chief State School Officers, many of you may know us, but in case you don't, we're a membership organization. We're made up of education chiefs from throughout the United States and its territories. So essentially the chief state school officers, in some states they're called commissioners, in some cases they're called something else, superintendents. Those are our members. Generally they oversee K-12 education within states, and some of them also oversee post-secondary education in states. It depends from state to state, it's a little bit different. In 2014, though, Terry Holliday was a commissioner in Kentucky, and he was also the president of CCSSO's board. He was very involved in kind of moving career readiness in Kentucky forward, and really thought it should be something that CCSSO takes on as a core issue of its work. And we've come a long way since 2014, but it started with initially creating a task force to kind of look into these issues and try to understand better kind of what are the challenges with doing this well. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And these were some of the guiding principles that the task force had. And I think one of the things that we believe strongly is that career readiness is this idea that it shouldn't be either college or career, but it should be preparing students for both. And we know that the job market is requiring skills and training and education that goes beyond high school, and so we want to make sure that students are prepared when they leave high school for all those opportunities that they want to take advantage of. We also know that communicating to parents and students and the broader community the benefits of career preparation is really important. And to, when we talk to a lot of parents and we explain to a program that about STEM and potential STEM careers,
parents love it. But then if we put the words career and technical education around it, sometimes their attitude changes because they have an older version of what they believe this is, that it really isn't meeting today's job needs. And so we know that that in many places has really advanced, and there's amazing career and technical education programs that parents should want their students to be involved with, but there is a communications gap that we're trying to overcome. And we're trying to do that with both with advanced CTE, but also with partners in the business community, explaining why this is important for them to fill the jobs that they have open that they're not able to fill. And generally want to move from this idea of this is good for those kids to an idea of this is good for my kid. I want this training for my own daughter. And as you'll see on the next slide, we'll talk about the many partners that are involved in this work, because schools clearly can't do it alone. This just gives you kind of a broad overview of the types of partners that we expect are working in states. Earlier, Kate mentioned the New Skills for Youth program. This is a JPMorgan Chase funded program where we're working with a lot of states around the country around issues of career readiness, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. The only maybe group I would add to this list, and we could probably add a few more, but policymakers would be one I would add to this list. Some of those are embedded in the state CTE directors or the K-12 school chiefs or post-secondary leaders, but policymakers themselves would be another area to add to this list. And really a key issue is business and industry leading in this work. I think it was great that I followed Erica because she talked about the need for business to buy into the training that's being done and why it's important for their fields. How are they going to trust that these are credentials of value that students are earning that will really make a difference if they employ students who attain those. In the New Skills for Youth work, we had 46 states apply for funding in the first phase, which started at the beginning of this year. 25 states were chosen, and each of those states for the last 6 to 8 months have been working with a coach as well as with state teams that represents all of these industries here on the slide to really try to advance career readiness within their state. And it's really interesting when you bring a group of people together with all these different backgrounds. They can, after a while working with each other, can often finish each other's sentences. And in many states, there's time where they've been able to bring all of these partners together to talk about these issues. So, you know, the planning grants that they are finishing out right now are a prelude to much larger implementation grants that will be issued to 10 states in the beginning of next year. So we're very excited with the work they've done. I think almost 201 states have told us that they could really use the funding in phase 2, but they're going to keep doing this work regardless of whether they get funding in phase 2. And that for CCSO is really important because we really want to support all of our state members in doing this work, advancing this work, and we're trying to put together resources and services to support states even if they're not part of our phase 2 funding. Clearly, another partner in addition to the Advanced CTE is Education Strategy Group. So the three of us are working really closely together to support states in this work. Thought I would go next to the next slide, talk about our theory of change. As you'll see, these kind of 6 objectives in the New Skills for Youth program align really well with the putting learner success first. In some cases, they are overlapping, and we find that at the end we're really looking for systemic change, and the only way to get to systemic change in a state is really to address all of these issues in one way or another. Next slide, please. So in terms of putting learner success first, this was the first objective. You know, holding programs to a high standard of excellence. For us, that means employers have to be part of the leadership in a state because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are recruiting and hiring students who graduate from our schools, and we want to know that they're going to buy into the credentials that students are earning as valuable. And I think generally we know that there's a lot of work to do, both from the state education agencies as well as from the employer side, to really make sure that there's a positive match as this work progresses. One of the things that many states are looking at, and some states, I'll talk about a couple, are starting to make progress on is reducing low-quality programs so that we can really make sure that we're not preparing students for kind of dead-end careers or careers that no longer exist. For example, in New Jersey, in the last 5 years, they've eliminated 500 low-quality programs in the past 5 years. And they are at the same time improving programs of study that require a post-secondary articulation dramatically, from about 64 programs a few years ago to over 300 programs today. Also, Kentucky is looking at the gap between career readiness education they provide and the job demands in their state. So many states are doing this as part of our grant program. Each state did a needs analysis. So each of those 25 states did a needs analysis, looked at data, and in some cases this was really eye-opening for the state and for all the partners at the table to look at together and say, where's the gap? I think it's important for educators to understand the gap. It's important for state leaders to understand the gap so that we can really start to target the solutions towards what the data is showing. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of providing learners an opportunity to choose their careers, I mentioned communication earlier. That's clearly where this is directed. We definitely need to help students and parents work on this issue. We're starting to have conversations with some national organizations that are youth-serving organizations, and just thinking about how they can help us promote this message so that parents don't reject a career readiness path of study because they think it's something that's not right for their kids, and helping them understand what this really is. So I think there'll be more work to do on that. I think to a state, we've seen a lot of states that are making progress on communications, but it's probably the one need we hear most from states is, what's the right message to show that parents that this is a good opportunity for their child. We also know that the engagement in career readiness programs of study often lead to increased engagement, increased retention of students, not only through high school, but also into college and through college. So there's a lot of reasons to want to support this work. We also see a lot of states that are kind of connecting this workplace experience to their educational experiences. So we have states, and we're encouraging work-based learning, internships, apprenticeships, and even teacher externships. Some states are requiring, for example, that teachers earn the credential that they're training students to pass. So that's kind of real life for a teacher. They have to get the credential in order to teach it. So there's some really interesting things we can do with that as well, in addition to things like dual credit and stackable credentials. Okay, next slide. When it comes to personalization, this is something that CCSSO has worked on for a while with its instructional lab network, innovation lab network, and really looking at competency-based systems. And just 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting up in New Hampshire where our career readiness folks kind of did a presentation jointly with our innovation lab network folks. And I think the states that, there are 12 states that are part of the Innovation Lab Network, and they really found it interesting, and I think they see the obvious parallels between kind of a competency-based system on the one hand and the need for skills and career readiness that match really nicely. So I think we'll continue to see our work evolve over this time. The idea that career readiness generally is hands-on work, and the educator is seen as kind of a mentor or facilitator of this work, fits in nicely with the competency-based work. And as one example, one of our team went out to Wyoming for to look at some schools that were doing career readiness well, and the graduation, the principal at this one school was telling our team that he clearly sent the message that graduation from high school is not the end goal, and I think that's something that we all see across the country as positive developments. Next slide, please. In terms of putting learner success first, as I mentioned, all of the NSFY states and the Skills for Youth states are looking at these issues. One of the big things that we've been working on, because we've heard the need from lots of states, was for accountability support. As someone mentioned earlier, ESSA is a great opportunity for states to look at what their accountability systems are measuring. And many states have expressed an interest in doing something around career readiness in their accountability systems. One of the challenges that we know districts have is whether they have the data to support these metrics. So in some cases where they do have the data to support it, states are looking to put indicators in the first round of ESSA work. In other cases, they are looking at doing it over a number of years and phasing in a career readiness indicator over time. This career readiness expert work group that we had was essentially a group of experts from the states that informed the work of our accountability work in career readiness. And really, we've kind of been highlighting the recommendations from that team and to state chiefs and to educators and other leaders across the country. We expect that we'll have finalized recommendations probably in January. But in the meantime, many of the states are using these draft recommendations to kind of push their own state systems to make sure that career readiness is valued in their incentives, in their accountability systems. Next slide, please. We're going to skip that one. Yep. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that we align both the post-secondary and the secondary work that we do. We're, in all of these projects, we're looking at teams to develop a statewide vision of what they're doing, and also to do deep dive work, not only in accountability, but in other areas. So as this project continues over the next few years, we'll see 10 states that are continuing to push the ball, but our hope is and our expectation is that there will be many more than 10, and we anticipate supporting them in many different ways, and hopefully in partnership with not only the folks leading this call, but also the folks on the phone, and look forward to ongoing conversations about how we can be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that good dive into new skills and really how I think CCSO is thinking about embedding this work kind of more broadly within all the great ways that it supports states and state leaders throughout the country. So I'm now going to move to Brian Wilson, who is the State Policy Director at National Skills Coalition, to share some work they have going on kind of at the state and federal and national levels. So, Brian?
Thank you, Kate. National Skills Coalition is a nonprofit organization that works to advance federal and state policies to increase the skills of America's workforce and meet employers' skill needs. I'm going to run quickly through a number of actions that we are engaged in that advance putting learner success first. Next slide, please. So employer engagement, as has already been mentioned, is a critical part of ensuring that programs are held to the highest standards of excellence. In particular, employers should be engaged in validating the value of programs and credentials they award. Last week, the Workforce Data Quality Campaign, which is a project of National Skills Coalition, convened subject matter experts from states, especially community colleges, to discuss how to ensure that credentials, particularly from short-term post-secondary training programs, are credentials that are recognized by employers and have value in the labor market. Among other methods, we discussed engaging employers through industry sector partnerships and validating program and credential value by measuring labor market demand and the employment earnings of program completers. In the coming weeks, we will be sharing insights from the convening. Next slide, please. Work-based learning is a critical part of empowering learners to choose a meaningful education and career, and a priority strategy for National Skills Coalition. In partnership with the National Youth Employment Coalition, last month we published a paper on promising practices for work-based learning for youth, focusing on at-risk youth. The paper recommends best practices such as linking work-based learning to career pathways and including support services and youth development. The paper provides examples from around the nation that include secondary and post-secondary education, paid internships, and youth apprenticeships. You can find the paper posted on National Skills Coalition's website. Next slide. Also in regards to work-based learning, National Skills Coalition, along with New America and with the support of many organizations, including Advanced CTE, is co-organizing a national conference on apprenticeship to be held next spring in Washington, D.C. The conference actually was just announced today. The conference will include sessions on youth apprenticeship, and we hope to see many from the CTE community there in D.C. Next slide. Education and workforce programs must work together to put learner success first. In particular, education and workforce programs must be coordinated in order to provide the most effective pathways for lower income and lower skilled individuals to advance to higher levels of education and employment. National Skills Coalition recently published Skill Equity Policy Toolkits that describe policies that states can adopt to support pathways for low-income and low-skill individuals. The policies are integrated education and training, stackable credentials, supplemental nutrition assistance program employment training, job-driven financial aid, and alignment policies that support comprehensive pathway services. You can find these toolkits, including legislative templates, under state policy on our website. Next month, we will publish 50 state scans that identify which policies are in place in each state. You will be able to use the scans to see where your state stands and can use the toolkits to help develop skill equity policies in your state. And the last slide, please. Finally, coordination and alignment across systems is a central theme in our advocacy for the reauthorization of the Perkins Act. National Skills Coalition has expressed strong support for the overall direction of the proposed bipartisan legislation coming from the House, while offering specific recommendations to strengthen alignment between Perkins-funded CTE programs and other federal, state, and local investments in skills. You can find our recommendations for Perkins reauthorization also on our website under the tab for federal policy. Of particular interest to us is how states can align CTE and WIOA, moving forward to advance both worlds. We will be working with states during 2017 on the alignment of CTE and WIOA. And then finally, you'll see my contact information, and this just outlines a few of the actions National Skills Coalition is engaged in that support putting learner success first. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was a great overview of the work that you've been championing for a while, and looking forward to 2017. And we're also hopeful for a Perkins reauthorization before we get there. So I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to prompt first. If anybody has any questions for any of the speakers or for myself, please write them in the chat box. I've seen one or two come in. You can chat them to me or to everyone. But I just want to share a couple of things, a couple of resources that we have created to really support all of you as you kind of want to learn more about, want to share, want to begin implementing the vision. On our website, we have some fact sheets that are, some of them are stakeholder specific. We have talking points, slides, how-to discussion questions to really be used with peers and partners to really think through diagnosing where you are and where you want to go, and a great page with the various ways that our partners have been supporting us, and we'll continue to add to this set of resources over time. We also have on our website a resource center, the Learning That Works Resource Center, which was launched last summer through our New Skills for Youth initiative. And as we created, it's a curated set of resources that are kind of organized around 12 policy areas. But as we created criteria for curating the resources that go in them, we absolutely looked at both the New Skills for Youth key objectives, which Rich spoke about earlier, but also these 5 principles, and really having intentionality that the resources that are put in here, but also the resources that we as an organization are creating. Our most recent publications around work-based learning, industry credentials of value, employer engagement, and a future one that will be coming out shortly around building capacity and bringing industry experts into classrooms are all intentionally aligned to this principle, to the principles within this vision to really identify where research is really needed, where we want to lift up best practices to move the field. So this is a great resource. We have resources from all the partner organizations on today's call in this center as well, and so I just wanted to share that as a resource. And then finally, before I open it to Q&A, is that we've created a sign-on campaign, which we've had individuals at the state level, local level, school level from over 2/3 of states have signed on showing their commitment to the vision. I encourage you all to do so if you haven't, and to share this out as a way for us really to have a feedback loop with those that are committed to it, to look for testimonials, and really be able to, help us think through the ways that we can be best supporting the field moving forward as one of the conveners around this vision. So with that, I think we've got about 3 minutes. So the first question that came in, which I'll ask I have an answer, but I'd rather hear our partners respond to it, which is around thinking about, of the principles and the actions, which do you see as being the hardest part of achieving this vision? What do you think is going to be kind of the biggest barrier to really making our system work for learners and putting them at the center of all the work we do?
This is Steve from ACTE. I think there's going to be challenging aspects to a number of these, the broad headings of these. I do believe when we start to talk about personalized and flexible learning, we know that there's going to be some challenges there. I mean, Kate and others, I know you've worked in terms of competency-based education, for instance, and making the school day, the seat time not as important as actually getting to the end result, the credential. And we know that those are challenging conversations to have in schools and at the state level as well. So I think that may be one of the more challenging aspects.
Thanks, Steve.
And this is Erica. This is, I guess, more of a systemic or implementation challenge. I think because the categories are so broad, it would be easy to sort of rest on the basic or the base level of hitting these points. But at the same point, one of the reasons that I like that it's broad, because it really gives regions and states a chance to really step up. So I think what's going to be challenging is not to use this as something just to check a box and say, yes, we did it, but to say, how can we use this to explore something different in our state and something innovative in our state?
Great. Thanks for that. I think that both when you look at the individual principles, there's real challenges to kind of making those policy changes and systemic changes, but I think the broader kind of commitment and willingness to take this on is not it can't minimize that, right, for this to happen. So we are pretty much at time. I want to take a quick moment to thank Cisco and thank Sarah Shreve for all the technical assistance around this, which I should have done at the beginning. I also want to mention that, as Sarah mentioned, we are recording this. We will have the webinar recording link up on our website, both on our webinar page, but also on the Vision resource page that I showed earlier and is available in the chat box. I want to thank all of our panelists and partners again. We really couldn't do this without you, both in terms of creating this document, but really in making it a reality. And thank you to, again, everyone who joined us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kay.